Back on the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show, 12:29 on this Friday afternoon. Special guest Saad Youssef from The Athletic and The Ticket joining us here in studio, one of the hardest working dudes in North Texas media, here on the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show for the second consecutive Friday. What has your football offseason consisted of? Have you had anything special keeping you busy before we head to Oxnard?
It's been a lot of nerves, I would say. We were talking about this before we got on the air. It's every day
Just no big story, please.
Yeah. Every day I kind of look up and I'm just like, there's not been anything crazy happening in the league, and it just feels weird. There's not a whole lot of player disputes. I mean, it's especially in Dallas, and we've become so accustomed to it over the last few years. With Micah, the year before that, it was CD and Dak, both in the same offseason. So it's
Even
been
before that, you had Zach Martin of all people involved in
Zach
one of
Martin,
these.
yes.
It's always something with this team.
Yeah, so
I'm
it's
genuinely
been
curious, if the World Cup would have distracted from it at all, even if there was. I mean, I know Cowboys run this town. That's you know, but I'm just curious if there was something, how much of a deal would have been with everything going on.
If there was a big development, if like George Pickens went on some rant on Instagram about how upset he is with the Cowboys or whatever, on Tuesday when Spain is playing against France in the semifinal, we would have dropped everything and talked about George Pickens.
Breaking news as we come on the air, George Pickens did this.
Yeah, the only thing that could have maybe held it off is if it was U.S. men's national team in the semifinal or final.
Yeah.
Something like that. But if it's, I'm with Mike. With all due respect to France and Spain, if George Pickens goes off, George Pickens gets the airtime.
Anything big Cowboys news, sorry.
That's the way it is.
It is the way it is in this market. Between now and then, we've got at least a couple of weeks where we can pay attention to the Rangers. I know Kelly will pay attention for longer. We all will. I'm somewhat kidding here, but they're in first place. There's a reason to pay attention to them right now.
Hey, we're talking Rangers. Do you notice, though, that I rolled the Rangers-styled open coming back out of the break, and then you immediately started talking about Cowboys?
Yeah.
Case in point.
They are in first place.
They are in first place. They start up their second half today. They face the Atlanta Braves for their first series out of the gates, but it is a tough stretch to open up this second half. They face Atlanta. They face the Chicago White Sox. They face the Tampa Bay Rays, all three of them first place teams, and their other two series in these first five series out the gates in the second half are against Seattle and Houston, the two teams directly behind them in the AL West standings. So it is going to be a very distinct 15-game litmus test.
Let's check back
Are
in 2
you
weeks.
for real or not? And as you were kind of joking before we started the show, wake up on August 1st and they're in fourth place in the American League West. I don't think they can quite drop to fourth with as bad as the American League West is, but that's totally plausible that this is where they fall. If they get through this stretch, that will be genuinely
y'all
impressive.
are good.
I know that they have won a World Series in the last 21 years, because I think it was 2005, but it still feels weird to say the first place White Sox.
Yeah.
It's just like...
That is true.
It's just bizarro world.
That is odd.
That's the American League for you, though.
I know.
It's strange.
I think the Rangers are in an interesting spot, though, just because I don't know how good they are. Just because they haven't even had a whole lot of like hot streaks and low, like it's just been pretty consistently mediocre for the most part throughout the season. Of course, there's been some win streaks here and there, but for the most part, they've been pretty mediocre. Injuries have taken a toll, but the guys that are injured weren't playing well before they got injured, so you don't really know how it's going to be when they're back.
Yeah.
I think 2023 keeps getting pointed back to in terms of just get in, and I understand, but usually we see this with teams around, other markets, and we're usually talking about it as a point of hope. But 2023 was an anomaly. I don't think that you can really look at that year and that run and say this is a formula. That wasn't a formula for success. It was lightning in a bottle, and that's not taking anything away from
got hot.
Yeah, it's not taking anything away from the 2023 squad. It's just that's just not the model. To the same way
you
that
can't bank on
you can't bank on that happening. It's not a consistent method for success.
Yeah, and to your point relative to, because it's been about a month and a half where they've played some solid baseball. You go back to late May is kind of where it began. They were 6 games under 500, and they have now worked their way to be 2 games above 500 during that stretch. There was one 5-game win streak at the front end of it. There was another, looks like 6-game winning streak tail end of June where they finally were able to work their way back above 500. But other than that, yes, it's just been kind of a lot of we're going to take 2 or 3, but one of Kelly's biggest frustrations is that middle game of the series seems to be they always get blown out by somebody, no matter who it is.
Yeah, I said this the other day where it was like, here's the formula. Game 1, win by the skin of your teeth. Game 2, get blown out. Game 3, win. And I went back and I looked it up, and they only dropped the middle game of the series, I think, 15 times so far this season. So, like, it hasn't been every time it's a 3-game series, but that's what it feels like. It's like the consistency hasn't been there. And that's what makes me, even being in first place, a little bit nervous going into the back half, is they haven't found the consistency. And then also, the bullpen, I was telling you guys, makes me incredibly nervous. We shouldn't have to put up six or seven runs to be able to win by 1 run at the end of the day. Like outside of, and it's crazy because Mike, you pulled some of the stats. The bullpen's ERA is actually not bad.
Yeah.
But
it doesn't. They're 11th right now in the majors.
But it doesn't feel
ERA,
good. It doesn't feel like this. I should feel some comfort when the starter goes out, and I don't. They also have to stop starting Kamal Rucker and have somebody do the first couple of innings.
Let somebody else do the first inning and then send Rucker out there. Yeah. But I think having a bad team be in first place is really not bad. A mediocre team be in first place is tough for management because with the trade deadline looming, it's just they don't have a whole lot to go get anything. And then they have some pieces that could probably fetch them some assets for the future, but what kind of message are you sending if you're really punting when you're in first place? And that's such a tough position to be in for Chris Young. Yeah,
you can't. And we'll see what the next 2 weeks hold because there is basically 2 weeks until the trade deadline, so you've got a little bit of time to work with here. And if they do over the course of these 5 series, hypothetically go in the tank, if they go 5-10 or whatever over this stretch, maybe makes it a little bit easier for them to justify selling at the deadline.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you're in first place, if you're even, because not only are they in first place, they're a good couple games clear relative to if they were to fall into a wild card spot. So they'd still be in a playoff position, even if hypothetically Seattle tracks them down. You can't be a seller at the deadline if you are holding a playoff position. That sends a terrible message. That sends a very frankly, Texas Rangers type of message with the way that they have spent on this organization historically. Some pockets were of good. Got to give them credit for going out and getting Simeon and Seager, and obviously that worked. Do more of that. It worked. But yeah, you can't. That would be a terrible message, not just to your fan base, but to your own clubhouse if you were to make that kind of move. But there's also nothing about this team that makes you go, let's go pick up a piece or two and try and accentuate this thing. Because who is this team actually going to beat in the postseason? Are you going to beat, are there 2 actually good teams in the American League in the Rays and Yankees and everybody else is dog water? Yeah. And even if you're able to matriculate through that, you ain't beating the Dodgers.
Right.
It's not happening. So.
Speaking of the Dodgers, that's the other interesting part of this whole equation is I feel like some teams are gearing up to brace themselves for the changes that are coming in Major League Baseball. And I don't know if you necessarily need to do that this early if you can play out the season. But that is something the Rangers should consider as well, just with, a potential lockout looming, the CBA and the salary cap, whatever. What can you do to your roster to make sure you're not stuck in a situation with a bunch of contracts and players that you don't want?
Yeah, because there's a lot of upheaval around the corner for Major League Baseball, and exactly what that's all going to look like is kind of anybody's guess. I mean, there are some tea leaves, there are some things you can point to as probabilities anyway, but it's certainly not close to delineated, and you do have to at least somewhat try to couch some things along the way to be in at least a decent spot to handle all of that whenever it does come to pass. Rangers are a game and a half up on Seattle right now, a game and a half further ahead of the Astros, who are 3 back in the division. A's and Angels are basically out of it, 8 back and 11.5 back. But both Seattle and Houston have been playing better of late.
It's almost like the division that nobody wants to win.
It is.
Well, it's all 3 of those that are just like leapfrogging each other around 500.
As the resident Mariners fan in the room, I was very frustrated when there was a point when we were up by 5 or 6 games, and then they at the same time the Rangers went on their run, we had a blunder, and that's what closed the gap super fast. And I mean, it's just really frustrating that the same thing could happen with the Rangers. They can get up by 5 games, and then boom, here come the Mariners and the Astros. So it just seems like it's a never-ending division that no one really wants to seal up.
It's alarming and illustrative of just how bad it's been in the American League West over the course of the season, that just generally in my head I have it like, oh yeah, Rangers, Astros, Mariners, they've all been playing a little bit better of late. You look at their last 10, 5-5, 4-6, 4-6, and that feels like improvement over what they were doing before.
Remember that the Rangers and the Astros were playing each other, so they knocked themselves out in those stats.
Yeah, they cannibalized themselves a little bit.
Yeah.
You've got, let's see, Rays, Yankees, White Sox, Guardians, and Rangers, the only 5 teams in the American League above 500. And to have 5 is an improvement over what there have been times where it's been as little as 3. It's been an ugly year.
It's been how many years now? And I still in my head go, Guardians. Oh, wait, yeah, that's right.
I want... When the Guardians made the name change, did they just have somebody go around with 4 letters, scrape the IN off, and put on GUAR? That's all you had to do. Just change the first syllable, and off we go.
Quick rebranding.
The schedule coming up, though, is challenging for Texas. We talked about that right off the top of the segment. That to me is really maybe kind of the arbiter of all of this. Is all right. How do you handle these 5 series? If you're able to handle it well.
What would you declare
that's a jolt
success in that stretch of 15 games?
I would say
10,
staying
wins?
at least in second in the division.
At least staying in second?
Maintain first or second in the division.
But
That's
you could go 500 in that stretch and still do that.
If you go 7-8, are you still in first place in the American League West at the end of this? It's plausible.
Thinking long-term success, you go through this tough stretch. Do you think is a 10, 11 wins in that is viewed
if you
as
win 10 or 11 in this stretch?
That's
look out New York.
At that point we go for
is
it.
the number 9? Is it 8? Is it only half of them?
Yeah.
I think if you do win 8 of them, you come out of that feeling pretty good about the whole thing.
But the Rangers have proven so far this season that they play really well against the hard teams and really poorly against the teams that they should beat.
That was
the reverse psychology of that.
Yeah. There's a lot of that I would have agreed with until maybe the final 2 weeks before the All-Star break. That last 2 to 3 weeks is where it felt like they did a better job of taking care of business against the Bads. Not great, but at least better than what we had seen the first 2 months of the season. So it's a weird team. It's a weird season. They're hard to make heads or tails of.
Baseball in general has been hard to make heads or tails of this season, I think.
It's funny how you mentioned the 2023 team. That was with Kelly's thing about being nervous about the bullpen. That was kind of the narrative going into that playoff run too. Is that they have this 7-8 run lead, and then oh crap, here comes Leclerc. He's going to blow it or whatever. And then he had a great run in the playoffs. So I mean, the similarities there are kind of interesting to me too.
Yeah.
And there ends our Rangers discussion for 2026. We'll see you guys in October. When we come back,
apologies to Matt.
I saw Teresa Woodard at the microwave earlier, and she does want to come on at some point to talk about the Rangers.
Let's get it in the next 2 weeks.
That's the time.
Teresa, come on down.